Ou deixa sua bunda ardendo, ou dá tapa, 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 pra caralho.
Welcome to Empowerment Unleashed Now, exploring your inner authority. I'm Michelle Jones.
And I'm Scott Collins.
And this is the place to connect with your highest, most essential self, your most empowered self, where you can explore your inner authority and learn from others and learn more about yourself.
We talk with fascinating people from all walks of life about transformation, healing, hypnosis, astrology, physical experience of being human, and heart-centered living.
We're so thankful that you're here with us. Let's dive right on in.
Hi, and welcome to Empowerment Unleashed Now. I'm your host today, Scott Collins. My celestial sister and compatriot, Michelle R. Jones, is unfortunately unable to join us today, having some Uranian technical difficulties. Our guest today is a repeat guest, the one and only Tom Parsons, PMAFA certified astrologer, also International Society of Astrological Research member. And the topic we're diving into today is how to navigate the electricity of this big Uranus transit moving into Gemini that is about to happen to us here in the coming days. And also the Jupiter transiting the Cancer, which is just underneath us, just happened. And we hit the ground running pretty much in this interview in classical Uranian way, Tom and I. So I'm actually doing this introduction posthumously. But thanks for being here. And without further ado, one of my biggest gurus, Tom Parsons.
If we look back at World War II, I mean, one of the things that I think mass media, at least here in the States, but especially overseas even, is the economy. Now, and I can understand that because there are major adjustments that are basically going on. And the stock market, when Trump took office, I think the Dow was at 39,000. I think it's up to 42.8 or 9 today. You know what I mean? And so it's it's gaining in strength. But I look at it this way: the United States is a Cancer. It's July 4th. That's Cancer, actually under the fixed star Sirius, as a matter of fact, which is a very spiritual star when you start getting into spirituality, so to speak. It's more or less like what it is. But as it goes through Cancer, it just depends. There's a couple of different charts that astrologers use for the United States. And I use Dane Rudhyar's chart. I got into Dane Rudhyar, and boy, he was just way ahead, not only astrologically, but, even spiritually, so to speak. And so the thing is that with him, Cancer is on the 8th house of the United States chart. The 8th house of the United States chart represents other money. It represents the banking system, the insurance industry, your taxes, your 401k, your debit card, your credit card, things of this nature. So I've been telling people that, like, look, it's like there's an adjustment that's going on. You know what I mean? But Jupiter is a big planet, so it's certainly, and it's open, it's honest, it's loyal, it's faithful. And we have to wait till this ingredients, gets a chance to sort of like, get out of the prison that it's been in, so that the truth can be exposed. And so what's going to happen as Jupiter is in Cancer right now, but as it goes up, it's going to start hitting Venus and Mercury in the sun sign. And I'm just looking at it that once we start getting in, to September and October, where Jupiter goes retrograde, for about 3 months, then I think you're going to see the stock market really fly, and go in from the 42 to close to 43. It'll be 48, 49, let alone getting into 50,000 again. But at the moment, I can understand why people are panicking, is what it is. So to me, it's like, I think it's a great time to, buy stock, is more or less like how I would put it. I mean, I bought gold when it back in 2019 when it was I think 1800. Well, my 3 ounces of gold is worth like $3,300 or $3,400 right now.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And then people are talking about, that there's going to be, which I understand. And I think that obviously in the next 7 years, while Uranus is in the sign of Aquarius, that, yeah, we're going to go to digital currency.
Hmm.
I think this is the only way that they can keep track of money. And I think all the countries are going to go on to, digital, so to speak. So, but Uranus, we have to understand, deals with our future, it deals with change, and it deals with new ideologies, so to speak. And what we really need to understand is that Uranus rules the neurons in our brain that, bring out the inventions like it did in 42, 43 with the rockets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the development of that NASA, that whole thing, the embryonicness got out of the box.
Yeah. And maybe that's where so, the innovation of Uranus and Gemini, the headiness and all that, but then the revolutionary element of Pluto and Aquarius kind of
We're
merge.
gonna have that.
I feel like that's where, the moving into digital currency, but then you have this innovative technology like Bitcoin, which is actually genius enough design that it is hard to trace. Like it is privatized for the people, like uncontrollable by a government, uncontrollable by central banks, that kind of thing. So like it's like a Trojan horse getting in there to, like you mentioned
Right.
in the eighth house, unraveling that antiquated banking system and finance system that's been there from the top down structure that had always been there before, but now it's like this grassroots, ground up structure of Aquarian community, sovereign living, really. Um, that's really, really interesting.
Well, let me give you a quick example. The American Broadcasting Company was created back in 42 and 49.
Hmm.
People are glued to the television. But what is on television at this time? Maybe I'm just getting a little bit too old. But I just look at it that people, what they are watching and what's being presented, to mass media, it's like, to me, the people that are involved with this, I think have been spiritually and intellectually neutered. you know, and we're going to swallow this. It's more or less like what it is. You need to listen to this.
Yeah.
Is what, and behind it is like, you know, ideologies. We know that. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
always more story than what it appears to be. That's why, in a personal way, um, not to give them a plug, but I like to watch, Netflix or, or Apple. You know what I mean? Because they have more original kind of material with new actors that aren't changing the lipstick or the makeup like they do in Hollywood. You know what I mean? And the new
Yeah.
writers, directors, and things of this nature, and more of the authentic kind of presentations that affect, I think, a person intellectually and emotionally.
Yeah.
Those kind. I mean, the only thing that Hollywood does is create, Walt Disney. You know what I mean? So the kids can be, I don't want to say manipulated, but it's
Yeah. No, it is a form of hypnosis and mind
music.
control. It exactly is. So when you were mentioning getting into, I'm just curious, like to dig in a little more under that, slightly looking out into September, October, when Jupiter starts to retrograde, and you're intuiting maybe some market surges. Now, is there anything that has to do with the fact that it is Jupiter actually retrograding that would do that? Or is it its place, like where it's going to be hitting other planets and that kind of thing? Like what else is
I
going
don't think
on?
it's had.
The terrain.
Yeah, it is hitting plant. The only reason I'm basing it on is that here in the United States, that's basically what's going on. But Jupiter and Cancer, we have to remember, this deals with our, with the United States, but it's all over the world. So it deals with, other countries. And we have to
Mhm.
understand that back in, what was it, 2000, what was it, one or two? Well, 2012 actually, or something like that. But there was a recession, that was basically going on at that particular time. And what I don't like, when Jupiter's in Cancer, that's our homeland. That's the United States. That's every country and their homeland, their property, whether it's commercial or residential. But Jupiter was in Cancer in 2001 to 2002. And what did we do? The World Trade Center
Yeah.
by Jupiter, foreigners, in which we went to war with Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Israel and Palestine were having problems at that time. Look up the history books. They were having problems then. I think that's when Arafat, I think was his name, something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but
Yeah. That conflict goes back forever.
Well,
Really.
then Jupiter, if we look at our country, I mean, it causes, I'm a big planet, and I'm going to cause just as much as I'm going to bring rewards, honors, and recognition. And, and Jupiter deals with a higher abstract mind, so to speak, and dealing with like spirituality. You know what I mean? It's like, lectures and seminars and, things of this particular nature in colleges and universities. And just as much as we can look at what is happening at like Harvard and some of these other schools that involve Jupiter, which is dealing with foreigners, as well as like, dealing with, dealing with religion or philosophy or spirituality, in some respects. So that's going on. I mean, let's understand that like this is going on in Ireland very, very badly, as well as England, France, and Italy. But one country, Denmark, they've maneuvered out of this situation, and they basically said, look, if you're coming into our country, you learn the language in 6 months or you got to leave. And I thought that was really pretty interesting, because we have to understand, you know what I mean, the Muslims, you know what I mean, and I have nothing against them, but the thing is that they are moving in, and instead of adapting to the homeland that they are in, they are trying to create a homeland there, in which they don't want to speak the language. They don't want to follow the customs, the morality, and, all these, other things that, any country, when you invite me into my, if I invite you into my house, I expect you to go by my rules, things like that. And we have to look at, some of the downside of like Jupiter. In Africa, Ebola, you remember that? Ebola started. 6,000 people got killed before they got control of that. There was like California, there were 7 million people that became contaminated because of bad water. That even went on more noticeably in Flint, Michigan, where they had lead pipes. You know what I mean? As long as,
Yeah.
so, I mean, those kind of things. And let's remember back in that there were like that's when the riots in China were going on, where that guy stood in front of a tank.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have the Jupiter, like, let's aspire. Let's all get together. Let's have a conversation. Let's all, get into similar principles and beliefs. And, there's part of like society that's going along with that. And then there's a part of society that, doesn't want to embrace getting along with your next door neighbor.
Yeah. That's great. And like, so that gives us, the listener, a really good collective feel for what we're dealing with. If someone wanted to look at their personal chart and try to apply how this Jupiter and Cancer transit could personally relate to them, how should you share with the listeners, like, should they look at where Cancer is in their chart, where Jupiter is in their chart? Like, what things could someone look at to apply it like on an individual level?
Yeah. So Jupiter moves pretty quickly. I mean, it's only in a sign for a year.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. Basically every month.
So the thing is that one would have those in the audience that have their charts need to look where the sign of Cancer is at. and it's going to be going through, a certain area of their life. And depending on the relationship it makes to the planets that you were born with, either we are going to have opportunities, at that particular time to expand every aspiration, hope, and wish and prayer that we have, or Jupiter brings false opportunities. And the reason that it does, it's very, very clever, because Jupiter rules the universities, it rules colleges. In other words, it rules the 3-digit IQ. And what happens with Jupiter in a negative aspect is that it's smart enough to deliver a falsehood on a silver platter so that all that glitters is not gold. And you reach out and embrace it. So we need to do our homework, and you need to, sort of like get your own truth, is more or less like what goes on to the opportunities that are before you, if it's in a negative aspect.
What would a negative aspect be for
Well,
someone, a novice looking? Yeah.
Yeah. These are what we call squares and oppositions. Now, squares are 90-degree angles. Oppositions, of course, are 180-degree angles. And, it's like Jupiter, when it's in an opposition, it's one of the planets that's going to basically cause you to be dealing with people that are trying to, provoke their ideology upon you, so that, you're around sort of like puppet masters at this time. And let's understand, Jupiter's pretty smart. So it's putting out that silver platter, like
Yeah.
that before, you know what I mean? Boy, it's time for dessert. I can't wait. And, the next thing we know, we're probably in the bathroom coughing it all up.
Hmm.
So that's why I say it's like Jupiter, boy, it's, because it's very spiritual, it's very humble, it's very kind, it's
Right.
very thoughtful, it's very giving. And all these attributes that are of your character are being used against you. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to court under that aspect. you know,
Well,
that's why in my,
it's interesting. I was going to allow you to give an example to our
well, the
listeners.
example
For
would
instance,
be that it,
because like my Mercury is at 3 degrees Capricorn, and so like very soon it's going to be Jupiter will be in direct opposition to my Mercury, right?
by hearing
My son's at 9 Capricorn, so it's going to be in the earlier stages, it's going to be in opposition.
and the opposition, I think, is going to be a little bit more harsher than the square.
It will be.
Because,
Yeah.
because the opposition means that someone is manipulating. It's because it's the opposition, outside people, outside circumstances that are manipulating, Jupiter, the kindness, thoughtfulness, sympathy, understanding, compassion, that is within you at that particular time. I sometimes, compare Joan of Arc, you know what I mean? Here she was fighting for the rights and things of this particular nature. And then, what do they burn her at the stake or something like that, or crucify? And then they made her a saint 20 years later.
Yeah. Right.
Well, she really did deliver the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Way later, we'll recognize that.
Well, I
So
mean, but
then like so like then a positive aspect would be like what, a conjunction,
I
or
look at conjunctions. I always look at conjunctions because the planets are moving together for the very first time.
yeah.
And I always look at that as a very, very positive opportunity. I think it's one of the strongest patterns in the chart, because they're going to come together, hold hands, embrace each other, and basically say, let's go after our mutual objectives and goals. Let's put a smile on our face, not mine, not yours, ours.
Yeah.
And then the sextiles and the trines. And the sextiles I like also because they're more or less like energizing a person to seek or the higher aspects of life, no matter whether it's mundanely, intellectually, spiritually, or whatever, to get the best. It's a very rewarding planet. Now, the trine's a little bit lazy. It says good karma, and sometimes it's like, well, it's like things are going good, and so it's like, don't you just relax and enjoy life to the fullest here? And it's like, no, look, you've got opportunities here. You know what I mean? Jupiter deals with your, psychology, philosophy, religion, spirituality. In other words, the higher aspects of the mind, Jupiter's a big planet, so let's go about expanding and broadening your aspirations in life that Jupiter says, I'm wishing for, I'm praying for, is what it
Yeah.
is, to become a tangible manifestation.
So if you've got multiple things in your chart, then
Well,
I guess why you try to use those more strong harmonious placements than the others to help you get through these moments. Like for instance, I'll throw another example. My Saturn is at 0 degree Cancer, where we're sitting right now. As we speak today, Jupiter is at 0 Cancer. So like for the listeners, how, what would how would I use that to help me through the other challenging placements, those oppositions I have?
well, the thing is that I like the Jupiter being on the Cancer in your chart, because that means that you are going to have it's kind of like, let me put it this way, people around you, that Jupiter deals with foreigners and foreign languages, colleges, universities. So you've got people around you that are going to give you and act as a catalyst in delivering authentic information that can move you forward. But we know that Saturn and Neptune are in the sign of Aries, and thank God Saturn's only going to be there for about 2.5 years. But that's going to be a double bubble that just started. As a matter of fact. So if that's hitting you, then Neptune kind of like brings to the surface, that like, I'm dealing with things that maybe I don't understand, or, I mean, Neptune deals with Hollywood. So, it's like, is this a real script that's going on, or is this something that's written for my entertainment? And then Saturn says things that have been in my life for the longest time, that have brought a certain amount of security, in my life, that these things are slowly disintegrating, because Saturn works very slowly. We have to understand it's the Great Wall of China in a negative aspect. So it works slowly. It kind of like attenuates our life, and then it brings them in a lot of unwanted responsibilities and obligations. So it really tests us, is what it does. And sometimes Saturn, because it's a very objective, rational planet, is that, sometimes um, we don't take the time to really analyze and scrutinize which are the ingredients of Saturn. I mean, when you really get into astrology, let's understand what really provokes people to move forward. Well, it's going to be a negative aspect that's going to put you in the corner. Now, are you stay in that corner, or are you going to empower yourself and get out of that and move forward in your life with your wants, needs, and desires, and overcome, this moment of despair?
I love that framing of challenging or negative aspects, Tom,
Exactly.
because so many offers, like when people have readings or this or that, they're like, oh, it's doom and gloom, or like, I've just got this bad situation. But it's actually, with that framing, the universe like really giving you this amazing opportunity to transform and change and break through. It's like, it truly is like the sharpening of the blade, like it's sharpening your blade to transform. Uh, so in some ways, and you gave me this analogy once, it's like when you have those challenging aspects, it's more like Mozart. It's music of the highest difficulty, but also the highest order. And then when performed beautifully, it's like an incomparable listening experience. And like, nothing against folk music, but it's like there's a simplicity, like there's some aspects that are just like 3 chords, simple
Right.
as songs. But then like when you get these challenging aspects, you're actually tapping into this ascension level fine art if you can get yourself out of that corner like you're talking about.
Well, that's when we
So
need either a best friend that we've known for the longest time to connect as a
yeah.
cat. Or yeah, maybe you need to see a therapist or a
Right.
psychologist, a marriage counselor, or somebody that's in that field that can help you through what I would call sort of like a minefield. Because if you step on it, my God, it can cause you to get a liquor cabinet, start doing drugs. You know what I mean? is what this planet can do. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
definition, yeah, the definition that we have of ourselves is kind of like lost. So we just don't have any boundaries at that particular time, and you can't do that. I mean, to me, it's easy to say that you can't do that. You know what I mean? And you need to understand that, like, okay, there's chaos, there's confusion. I'm not sure what to do because the path I was on is oh my goodness, I don't know what happened here, but true north is no longer a compass in my life. And so I need to, obviously, if I can't do it myself, get help to better understand the situation, in which then, I'm going to sort of like resurrect myself and put on that breastplate and have new objectives and goals and alternatives and choices and the stamina and the determination to go out and not only prove myself, prove something to myself, but prove things to other people. Not that that's necessary.
Hmm. So, I mean, and speaking of true north, then, like, how important is in someone when they're looking in their chart at their nodes, their north node? Like, how can that help them in a situation, both
Yeah,
personally and then looking at the collective too, like
yeah.
the collective north node now, or the node versus your node in your natal chart?
When we look at the nodes, the north and the south node, it would be nice. Let me put it this way: if we had a planet hitting the north node, because that deals with our future.
Hmm.
But it does deal with the sense of adventure, and certainly the sense of adventure, especially fixed signs, like sometimes the Aquarians and especially Tauruses or Scorpios are pretty, and Leos, we have to show them in there too. They can be resistant, to change, is more or less like, what could go on. But the South Node says, hey, I've been here. I deal with the past. I've been here, done that. I feel comfortable with this. Let me just stay here in the past, the antiquated past, the monotony of the past. You know what I mean? Where I'm, not breathing fresh air any longer. And my goodness, it's like this is where we can bring in that planet Uranus. You know what I mean? That like stimulates our heart, rules the neurons in our brain. And it basically say, listen, I need to get off these puppet strings, get off the leash, and get away from spinning my wheels at this particular time. And Uranus, I mean, what I like about it, we can relate it to the South, is that Uranus basically says, hey, look, I can't do 55 anymore. I've got to do the pedal to the metal. I'm starting to suffocate at this particular time. So what's nice is that it's an inner ingredient, but we have to understand that ingredient, that wants you to sort of like, I don't know, take off the mask, in some respects, and be true to ourselves and true to our ideologies, even, and things of that nature. But we could be around people that want us to, instead of getting into a different viewpoint, keep the same viewpoint,
Hmm.
uh, keep us stuck, keep us so that we can be uh, controlled, things of that nature. So,
Hmm.
th-
So as Uranus is, moving into Gemini here, and we're getting this accelerated, uh, probably technological um, things we had thought of before, like talking about currencies and technology and AI. Who knows? It's probably going to, like you said, pedal to the metal. It's not going to be 55. It's going to be, I don't even know. Are we even driving, or are we like hovering, like heading to that territory? And then with the collective North Node in Pisces now, like, how do you sense or feel that convergence of, Pisces being our more mystical, spiritual connection to source, even creativity and art, like that collective North Node, North Star guiding ambition as Uranus moves into this like explosive Gemini possibilities?
well, I think even when we say Uranus moving into Gemini, I mean, I look at it this way: when we were talking about neurons, and I need to get things done yesterday. I can't wait for tomorrow. So it wants us to be impulsive and spontaneous. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
But what happens sometimes with Uranus is that we have to understand that while I would like to say that it's going to um, help the collective move forward, which we see AI is coming, and you either need to get an AI or you're going to get lost. You're going to be on that Windows 98. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be on, and so, but in order for that to go on, one has to be, as I've said before, sort of like spiritually and intellectually, ready to sort of like break away from the conservative elements of life and become not only a humanitarian, but a humanitarian unto themselves.
Hmm.
And what do they want and they need and they desire? Because I just look at it, as I've said to you many times, when we're born, we take that first breath, and our parents, and I don't want to accuse them all, of course, and the government and our educational system, they mold us into, a mannequin that belongs into a window, you know?
Hmm.
And it's like, look, it's like there's just a lot more to life, but you need to get, outside the lines and be that rebel, be
Yeah.
that, outlaw, get that tattoo and
Right.
and
And
so
Uranus is the rebel, right? So I feel like we are
it's
moving into a
evolution.
period, yeah, where we have this collective support, but then
Right.
the way we do make the collective change is to individually change. Like, right? That's
Well,
how we do it. Like individually, one at a time, we transform, change our antenna, change our frequency. Then the collective changes how we view it.
right.
It's just a reflection of us, everything, right? So that will change, and then everything does change. And then those Aquarian frequencies, like we're picking the higher vibe to be on.
Well, but that's easier for you and I to say we're here, picking the higher vibe. And this is what I'm saying is that, the way that people have been, um, I could use the words because the way I look at things, manipulated and controlled,
Hmm.
it's like, um, I don't know. It's just that I think that we have to understand that, a large portion of humanity, unfortunately, needs to be um, maybe instructed, at this particular time, and maybe, like you said, in some respect, maybe get into, Mozart or Beethoven and things that stimulate. I mean, this is what Uranus
Hmm.
is all about. Let me get back to that planet. Uranus is all about, even though it's in Gemini, it's getting into new cures. It's getting into plant medicine. It's getting into sound waves. It's getting into light waves and getting away from the pharmaceutical company that RFK is trying to dismantle and bring, instead of like, you know, giving us another COVID shot and things of that nature. Well, why don't we go out barefoot into the backyard and plant ourselves with the magnetic core of the earth? And maybe see what is that doing for us, or get
Yeah.
into nature. What I mean? I really got into nature when my wife, she's an Ironman, but we were out in Utah, lower Utah. She was doing an Ironman, but when I got out there, we flew into Vegas, got a car, and drove into there, St. George, the lower part. But the speed limit was 85. That's Uranus. I can't do 55 anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw a picture that I had never seen before because I've never been out west. Detroit, New York, Nashville, Chicago, those places. And I'm looking at, the desert. I'm looking at these mountains that are black coming out of the earth. You know what I mean? And there's nothing there but nature, which was just awe inspiring with what it provoked from me. You know what I mean? Is more or less like what it did, because it's, part of the Grand Canyon right in there. And so this is why,
Yeah. And
Uranus.
underneath that's crystal, basically. Yeah, all those mountains. I mean, they're basically crystal. So, like, yeah, you're feeling that transmitted energy even.
And this is what people are going to feel, that this transition is like ongoing. And it's like, yeah, maybe you need to update. you know, your computer. Maybe you need to take a few seminars or classes on technology, because the world is going to start running on technology. And I wanted to get back to Uranus, because when we were back in 42 to 49, let's understand the United Nations was formed at that time. The World Health Organization was formed at that time. Jackie Robinson was the first Black player to play in the National League, is what went on at that particular time. But like I say, the race riots, and that went on at that time. So we got, two different ways in which people don't want change, and then people that are, that are embracing the enthusiasm, the excitement, the new heartbeat, the new definition, and getting into the essence of not only themselves, but humanity as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean,
So like
sounds
with
like
Gemini, yeah, and that makes sense with the Uranus too, because basically, Gemini, the mind,
right.
and basically the mind is like the supercomputer of our body, right? So if we need to upgrade our software, our algorithm, and we do it internally with upgrading our mind, right? So that does mean accessing more of it. That's the unconscious mind. And if plant medicines and psychedelics can help us do that, access pineal gland, access our unconscious more, create new neural pathways, then we are upgrading our computer, our artificial or unartificial
Well,
intelligence,
we have to
however you want to
look.
call it. Yeah.
If we went back to 2001, we do have to understand, or maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe it was in the 90s that I want to talk about. The Vietnam War was going on, but Woodstock, that was 69. Yeah, that was in 69. And Woodstock was a hippie movement, LSD, you know what I mean? And then people avoiding the draft by going to Canada because they saw that we were nothing more than like a proxy. You know what I mean? For whatever. I mean, the French were there. I mean, what's there? What is there? You know what I mean? I mean, now, they make a lot of our clothes. I do know that. But what was there at that particular time other than a lot of people getting rich if they invested into the Defense Department?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, and it's interesting. I mean, they killed Kennedy. Why'd they kill him? Why'd they assassinate him? I mean, that's how I would look at it, but that's my personal opinion, is more or less like what it is. What was he going to be doing?
Why did they, Tom?
That would be that's something that you and I can shoot.
This is a risk.
I just don't want to.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's something that could be dangerous. But unfortunately, a lot of people know. You know what I mean? Is what was really going on at that time. So, I like Uranus because it's let me tell you another thing. The National Basketball League was created at that time. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of Uranus deals with organizations, teams, committees, parties, and it deals with Congress. It deals with the House of Representatives, in every country, not just our country. And then it deals with us, in which, as I said before, all of a sudden we have an epiphany. Then you know what? Why don't we go to a new restaurant? Why don't we try that out? Mm-hmm. Is what it is, instead of going to the same old thing. And this is what people need to gravitate to. Is more or less like what is for. And then we have to remember, Uranus is all about our independence. It's all about our freedom. It's all about willing to exercise. But the thing is that while we can have these people in the streets, unfortunately Uranus is on on the Mars, and we have to understand there's always an orb, a 2-degree orb. So actually, when Uranus got it like 28 degrees, it started to affect crowds and all on rights and opinions. So look at what's going on in out in California. We'll look at what's going on up there in Washington, and we can expect that it's going to go on into Chicago, New York, and Colorado. This is these are ideologies that are in my personal opinion that aren't Uranus. Is how I would look at it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's why I said earlier, it's like, what is really behind all this? Where are they getting the money? Who bought all these masks to protect them from from the gas and all those kind of things? So what's behind all this? And we have to remember not to, but I have to, kind of say it, but out in California, uh, they count heads. You don't have to have a license or a voter ID. They just count heads. So that means the more heads that are count, the more that they can put into, I don't know, the House of Representatives, things of this particular nature to maybe sway votes for this way or that way. I don't want to sound like a conspiracist, but something's wrong here.
So if someone's again like trying to merge this like the individual into the collective experience with it, but if you're looking at for some of those answers as an individual, like why and what's going on here with this, is it helpful to look at in your individual chart where Gemini is and then what house that's in, and that helps you get your individual lessons from the collective movement of Uranus moving into Gemini right now? Like how important is that?
I think it's extremely important for not only Uranus, but for because as we said earlier, it's like, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto have all moved into, well, or are moving into different signs. Yeah, they are now. They're all in different signs right now.
They are, yeah.
So I think it's important to see, the movement that these planets are at, what house they're in. I mean, if Jupiter was in your fourth house, well, my goodness, that deals with home and property. It's like, yeah, I painted some walls and I've got some new furniture, but I need something bigger and better and more. Maybe it's time for that for sale sign. If Jupiter's in the fifth house, which is like deals with children, maybe it's a time to have children. And it's really interesting because what Trump wants to give $1,000 and put it into an IRA for children that are being born, because the birth rate in the United States for the last couple of years have been like it was in 1942 when Uranus was there before. All the men are overseas. The birth rate fell. Birth rate in Japan is falling. In a lot of the countries. I mean, it's like it's almost like younger people. Well, you and I here in Nashville, the cost of living, the cost of a home. My God, it's like it's outrageous. And how are you going to spend what a modest price of like $15,000 a year in raising a child, or getting a babysitter, or sending, you know what I mean, and things of this particular nature.
Yeah.
So he wants $1,000 put into an IRA, and then that way, when they're 18, he is the only one that can, or she can touch it. So they got some money. Do I want to go to college? Do I want to be a tradesman? Or, do I want to buy a house? Do I want to make a major move? Give me that, that kind of foundation in some respects.
Yeah. Do you think we should expect some pretty wild peaks and valleys collectively after in the first year or so? Once
Absolutely.
Uranus, yeah, like
it's
all across the board, or do you think it'll be isolated in certain areas, like in the markets, or will it be
I think it's going to be like you say, all across the board. I think that's exactly what you're saying here, because it basically is coming on stage, and it wants everybody to know it's on stage. It's going to be a focal point. I mean, some of the things that one of the major things that goes on is that it creates earthquakes. And if we look back at 42 to 49, when Uranus was there, there was a good dozen earthquakes from 7.1 or 2 to 8.4. So if Uranus is here, you know what I mean, is that I'm looking at, and let's understand it deals with, well, it's going to be more like Jupiter being in Cancer, because Cancer deals with land and it deals with growing, amplifying crop. Well, I just watched a thing, this farmer over in Oklahoma. He has to cut down his herd because they have no rain and there's no grass to eat. So Jupiter being in Cancer, which rules actually our stomach, it rules the restaurants, foods. And so if this is going on Cancer, is there going to be a lack of food? Or is food, going to cause you to get into better nutrition? So we cut out pop potato chips and, you know what I mean? These,
Mhm.
candy and things of this particular nature. And Uranus eat much more holistically,
Yeah.
because people are going to be demanding that. There's going to be more and more whole foods, as well as that, what a Trader Joe's that I think are going to be
Yeah.
opening. People are going to start reading labels because you're killing me.
Yes. Yeah, I feel that coming in this. I mean, all the big transits that just happened. I feel that what you're talking about, like individual sense of taking your own health, wellness, well-being into your own hands with your own empowerment,
Exactly.
and like,
Empowerment. Right
yeah,
there.
just like, I mean, and it starts from there, right? It really does start from what we put in our body. Like, it affects our gut health. It affects our heart and mind health. It does really, like, it is like the center of it almost, right? I mean, the heart is the
Well,
highest intelligence, but our gut health affects our mental and emotional health.
oh, it
So, like,
every way
plants,
possible.
herbs,
Every way
yeah,
possible.
yeah, I feel that uh tremendously coming on in this transit as well. Um,
Well, one other thing we have to remember, World War II, what did we create? The atomic bomb,
mhm,
hydrogen bomb. Look at what
yeah,
we got right now, Uranus. Uranus deals with satellites. You know what I mean? It deals with, like, our internet and, things of this particular nature. And, I let me just hypothesize, I guess, but it would be hard for me to believe that we don't have satellites up there that are going to knock out other satellites that
yeah,
may have a negative connotations to why they are up there and what they are doing. You know
yeah,
what I mean? As I said before, I don't like, with Jupiter being in Cancer, because when that was in Cancer before, I think when Obama was in, we try to make a deal with them, is what it is,
mhm,
to stop this, nuclear energy kind of thing that they want to turn into atomic bomb. And that's why I'm worried at the moment with Uranus on the Mars, as we did just discuss,
mhm,
let alone Uranus being in Gemini, which is adamant differences of opinion, because the sign of Gemini is transaction, negotiations, and agreements, that Uranus, that everybody in the world wants to get in on this. And, like, let's all live happily ever after. But there are a few people, you know what I mean, that have, and, a few different kind of religions, I'll put it that way. And some people in the way that they think, that are viewing it in another way, that, like,
mhm,
it's like, no, I want them to be like me, is more or less like
yeah,
what it is. So let's just go to war with them and create this. But we have to look at it with Uranus on the Mars. I don't know. I'm just very, um I don't think anything positive is going on with those any kind of treaty agreements in any way, shape, or form.
mhm.
And I think
Well,
that
that's interesting, because it's debatable that, during that era of the invention of the atomic bomb, the last time
right.
Uranus was in Gemini, that also it's what woke up certain non-human other galactic species to be a little more interested in us, because all of a sudden this precious planet of Earth, some of its inhabitants, all of a sudden started doing and creating some things that were possibly very harmful for the earth and for ourselves, like leading towards the destructive path. So now that we're moving through this here, it's like, oh, okay, where is this going now? With that, is it going to be just full on transparency with our relationships with others out there now? Are we going to are we going to work through that? That was a concern last time Uranus was in Gemini. And I even wonder, like, if some of these, if the planets are going to conspire to trigger these major uh Earth incidences like earthquakes and some things like that. I mean, there may be some discoveries out of that that are actually even good for the Earth. Like there may be something happen under the oceans, like the waters can start clearing after all these planets just got out of Pisces. Like maybe there's a clearing now with our water situation with the North Node in Pisces. I don't know. I'm just like speculating here, but
Yeah,
I've
I
been
think
seeing some of that stuff.
optimistic myself because of
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's that. Then that's me. I'm optimistic
Coral
about it.
reefs are dying. We're
Yeah.
going to fish out the ocean. Yeah, the currents will change. You know what I mean? And let's understand when you were talking about, um, different kind of species, the alien species.
Yeah.
Well, we have to call them aliens. That's what we have to call them. But let's remember that in 47, when the UFO crashed there,
Mm-hmm.
and they hit
Uranus
us
and
all.
Gemini. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what really happened? And was there anybody that alive, and the technology, and all these kind of things that kind of like kept to ourselves, as well as kept from the world at large, because the world at large isn't ready to say that we are a part of a galactic civilization, even though the scientists, the modest elements, 2 trillion galaxies, 600 billion stars in each galaxy, 1 trillion planets in each galaxy. You know what I mean? And then to create life, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon, a few other miscellaneous things. But for that to come together on its own, okay, in a miscellaneous way, a miracle, is 1 to the 10th power with 40 zeros after it, which means there has to be a prime creator.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that Uranus isn't just, different religions, and and different nations, and different customs, and different races and things like that. We have to get outside the boundaries. What Uranus wants us to do is to beat the boundaries. And so this is why I'm wondering, I would think, especially with Pluto being Aquarius up until 1944, I look at Musk. I think there's a good chance we'll have a colony on the moon by 2027, and then be able to go to Mars with new propulsion systems, because they're even coming out with, or I should guess we should say they're experimenting on that hydrogen engine for a car that has no pollution.
Yes.
Water is what it is. But to me, who's going to put that on the sidetrack and put that into slow motion? You know what I mean? Is how I would look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say corporations are guilty of that, but it's like, look, I got an engine that I need to put into a car, and if it's not engine,
will the corporations, will they be a part of that 8th house crumbling of the antiquated structures? Like will something like that find its way through and into the masses in like an innovative way we're not imagining?
Well, let's remember the Jupiter, and like you say, it's like the Jupiter being there, and bringing about new principles, beliefs, and new ideas, and things of that nature. What it does, it's an educational kind of planet. But the 8th house is also the house of death. So that can be a death to the dollar, or what I mean, is there going to be some kind of epidemic that comes about for whatever reason, or is that they're just going to be getting rid of like old, monotonous, outperforming, polluting structures, and introduce the new wave of living in humanity's life, is how I would have to look at it. Not just ours, everybody.
Yeah. And I guess it's also, are we individually, which then expands Jupiter into the collective, ready for that? Like, I have to be able to be okay with, any hair color, gender, skin color, anything, walking across the street, conversing with them, this and that in my life, if I'm going to be okay with like a galactic being showing up on the street corner. So like, and like, I feel like that dimension, that 5G, like they're not going to reveal themselves so much until we're like ready. Unless we can, like, to a degree, half of us at least do this amongst ourselves, right? And then that's going to show up, and then it comes with that too. Like we have to consume and receive these less pollutive technologies, machines, and integrate with AI in a way that is sentient. Dare I say, like we sentiently integrate with AI and have belief that it has possible conscious sentience abilities too, and then we can integrate in that way. Then we can move into this major Uranus Aquarian thing, like with consciousness. That's the best case scenario I'm feeling.
Yeah, I look at it this way because we're talking about our thinking patterns and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Uranus, I would not be surprised if we aren't going to be able to, that they're going to more or less put implants, chips in our brain to cure major diseases. Is how I would look at it, because now, unfortunately, not all doctors, certainly not my doctors, but and I shouldn't say all doctors, but let's just say that they've been trained that when I come in, um, how's your life? How are you getting along? What are you eating? Where are you working? It's like, oh, you've got this problem. I'm going to give you a script.
Hmm. Here you go. I get a little
Really?
kickback. I get a little kickback
Really?
with this. Oh, they didn't hear me.
And it's just that's why I'm just into, myself. I've been a vegetarian since I've been around, 25, and alkaline water, and
Hmm.
I make sure I get organic vitamins, you know what I mean, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
so a couple of things. My wife has something on her phone that gets into approved. When we're going to buy, when we're in the grocery store, has this been approved? To be healthy for you, and so it's like, oh, that's pretty interesting, because it makes it easy for anybody. Unfortunately, I go to the store and all of a sudden I see, because women, obviously I think do most of the grocery shopping. And unfortunately, I see him coming out with like 3 or 4 12 packs of pop.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And you wonder why there's higher active children when they've got like what 8 to 10 teaspoons of like sugar. I'm not sure, but I know there's a tremendous amount of sugar, let's just say, and so
Hmm.
is. But
So I've got a couple little um, and to listeners out there, Tom and I have been in a zone, and I just want to say, you may be going, "Where's Michelle?" So I think in true Uranus form, she's having a tech issue. So you're almost like you just dropped in on me and Tom having a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. We just hit the ground running here today. And I do want to pull up. Uh, there was, Michelle and I always have a little script and some ideas, and pull it up. And I want to throw a couple thoughts at you, Tom, like
sure.
to see your reactions on a couple things as again, like reflecting to the, we've talked about a lot of transits today because there have been a lot of big ones lately, right? Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter. And the last time we interviewed you was Pluto. Like these are all really big things, but pertaining to the Uranus transit, um, so we alluded to it here a little bit, and but I want to go a little deeper in like how important is human connection um, when we're talking about technology and AI, technology versus AI and human connection moving through this Uranus transit in Gemini.
Well, this is where it's interesting because I think that robotics are going to be in everybody's home in some respects. You know what I mean? Now we've got the vacuum cleaner, but what else in the next 7 years with our technology is it going to do? But as I said before, you and I are talking like, on the computer at the moment.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And we have a screen. And, I'm just wondering, like I said, earlier, is there going to be the technology that, can, pull this up or pull that up that we see in the sci-fi movies, that the screen is right here. All I got to do is wave at it, and that kind of stuff. And, these are things, that's what I'm saying, it's that old school isn't working anymore. And you need to get into the program with this new technologies, new ways of thinking, And the only way that we can really do that, well, I mean, we can do that, but I would like to see humanity as a whole come together. You know what I mean? Because we can do more, for civilization and the spiraling upward than we can do by fighting with each other. Yeah, I mean, not just nation and nation, but just fighting with people, our neighbors, and things of this nature. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. So in this age here, then, as when we have mass access to information, too, then, like, I guess two-part question: what is the difference between information and truth? And then how, what are some tools that we can, use individually to help make that discernment, and then again move through this transit with an awareness of information versus truth, and how we use that.
Well, I think that obviously there are going to be those people that are going to be able to disconnect from this reality and disconnect from the ideologies that it is presently, wanting that and has been that we've been conforming to, so that we can get out of the box and embrace this. And like when we were talking earlier, understanding that there could be aliens, different civilizations, but and I hate to be negative about this, but I just look at it this way. Are they going to basically say that they are here to conquer Earth and that we need to go to war with them? We need to kill them because we don't want our reality and what they can offer us, uh, to be instilled because of the way of life that we presently live in, that we're uh, mass media, I think, is content with. And so that's why I like Uranus in ruling the neurons in our brain. And as I said earlier, to reiterate, those that have not been intellectually or spiritually, sort of like neutered, there will be that part of civilization that moves forward. You know what I mean? Is what I mean. I had a computer because mine crashed. And talk about Uranus, stress, anxiety, and frustration in like inputting, all the new stuff into the computer. But it was necessary for my well-being, for my career, as well as for me to, contact, other
Yeah.
people, like the lectures, the seminars, the podcasts, and YouTubes, and all these kind of things where my old computer crashed. And so I just looked at it that it crashed. Oh, I need to get a new one. I need to update. And it's just not updating the computer. What else do I need to update at this particular time and get into a new format that the collective whole is working towards at this particular time? Look at how they're weeding out the White House. You know what I mean? And getting rid of the the antiquated elements that have been there
Yeah.
in moving forward. And I think
Yeah.
that's done on an individual level, but we have to remember that we need, things like the new lectures, the new seminars, the new. I mean, I'm looking at that. Probably Facebook is going under. You know what I mean? Instagram is going under with this new artificial intelligence. You know what I mean? As
Yeah,
new
that's interesting.
is, and people commuting or communicating, in an easier and more effective way, and things of that particular nature. So, all of this is like why it brought us into, a new fold, a new way of communicating, and bringing us together with people that are over in Europe, that we can just press a button and we're Facebook friends, or we're on Instagram, or whatever. And all I'm looking at is that it's a different kind of technology to, I think, give us greater objectives because of the creative spark, and give um, people as a whole more of a self definition of what they are a part of.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I feel like, what you're expressing there too is like the individual part. Maybe that's where the truth element rolls in, is that realization that the truth is individual. Like
Right.
we, like that is our right. Our truth is ours. That is the part that we define, that we have dominion over, is the truth. And there's information everywhere, but I mean, is that maybe something, how an individual can prepare for this shift? Is that one way, like realizing and embracing that, like the truth is something that's for me. I can customize that and use that as I move through this shift in any way possible.
Well, I think that's I think that's a very good way of like looking at it. You know what I mean? And I think that if any planet is going to do this kind of thing, and I think that Pluto being in Aquarius, remember, Pluto dealt with the essence of who and what we really are. Not the cosmetic ego, so to speak. And as Pluto rules that, it's like people are going to, realize that these outside cosmetics factors are no longer a seduction any longer. And then I think that Uranus is going to be sort of like, the sort of like turning on, the adventure, the progress, and the new challenges,
Mhm.
so to speak. And I think that absolutely a lot of people are going to embrace that and move forward in their life, and especially with their individuality, and get outside the box with their thinking patterns. And that's why I think the stimulating the neurons is like new ideas, and,
Mm.
all these other kind of like technological kind of things that, serve even uh, the, uh, the industry of like medicine and hospitals, with like, new things that are even going on in there. But it has to start on an individual level with an individual person, and them getting bored,
Mm.
what's going on in their life. And sooner or later, people wake up to that.
So it sounds like you're mentioning that Pluto kind of helped unlock some self-awareness
Yeah.
in it, right? I mean, how important is that to navigate the period? I guess, but
Yeah,
I get Pluto's like the one, like the true gatekeeper, right? So, I mean,
exactly.
like, I guess maybe we take that lesson, that self-awareness lesson that Pluto dropped on us, uh, nicely with a little cushion a few months ahead of time before this Uranus transit.
Right. And I think and look at, let's understand, I think Uranus, for the most part, is going to be extremely beneficial, to a lot of people. It's more or less like what it is. But the problem is that, Uranus also deals with people that have adamant differences of opinion, that don't want to move forward. I'm really content with what's here. And I think that, that's why you say it's like, medicine being updated and more people moving towards that, because Pluto's life and death. I want to live longer. I want to live a better life, and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So I don't know. So I'm just looking at it that, like, as I said before, I think it's more shared objectives and ideologies that really need to be sort of like embraced, like
Mhm.
in humanity. And unfortunately, uh, division has to go on in order for, for that. I don't I don't like to use the word righteousness to go on, but that has to go on. I mean, Jupiter deals with spirituality, so it's not, just the church, but, it deals with psychology, philosophy, let alone religion, but, and having faith and things of that. And so Jupiter is going to expand, I mean, it wants to expand our awareness, not only intellectually, but, hey, we're always going down to Florida, enjoying Panama Beach. Why don't we go to England? Why don't we go to, and Jupiter's the 3-digit IQ. The smartest people are uh, in the world are in Ireland. You know that 52% of the people in Ireland have a bachelor's degree?
Wow. No, I did not know any of this.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly. It is
Got
a
some
wild.
Irish roots.
And then we get into Japan and South
Yeah.
Korea, and then a little country called Estonia, as a matter of fact, that
Learned
deals.
a little about that country recently.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So so when I'm thinking about, differences of opinion and philosophies and whatever religion, and then Uranus being an asset in navigating that. I mean, let's for broaden it, just say differences of belief systems, right?
Yeah.
Maybe then that's where like Uranus can really be an ally to us collectively. Because when I think of Uranus, I think of Aquarius too, and sovereignty, right? So maybe that way through is like sovereignty is individual. I have mine, but it's also honoring it in others, right? Honoring that as like
Absolutely.
a high
Absolutely.
form of ascension in ourselves and in the collective too, and all the individuals. And that's the way forward, really. It's not like everybody is the same and we have all this same belief systems, kumbaya kind of thing. It's actually like just a broadening, infinite holographic version of as many different individual sovereigns that you could ever imagine, and all existing, admiring our differences. You know,
But
I'm
the
being
thing
hopeful a
is
lot
that,
today, aren't I?
yeah, but Uranus is
I'm
the,
very optimistic, but
you have to understand it's electricity. So, and it's very
yeah.
magnetic. So the switch is being thrown. And so you're going to be drawn to want to explore, want to investigate, want to do things that you don't normally do. But like I say, there are going to just certain, certain signs that are extremely reluctant to get on board with all of this. When actually, what it's really doing, as you just said, bringing out more of our individuality as a human being.
So can inspire bravery? Can Uranus do that? People to
What?
bravery, people to be
Well,
maybe
that's what I say.
more brave, yeah, than they usually are. Yeah.
I always put it this way: it's a time that we sort of like put on our breastplate, and we realize, in a kind of like in a personal way, that we've been helping others create their reality, and I haven't been doing anything about myself. So it's a time to pay attention to my wants, my needs, my desires, get outside of the box, and get out of jail, so to speak, and start, impregnating, uh, y- you know. These new ideas and places to go, and ways of thinking and things of that nature, and get a taste of it instead of resisting that. I don't want to do this or do that when your friends are doing this. It's all like, come along, and we need to say yes and see what it can lead to. Because remember, if Uranus is a magnet, and if it deals with your future, obviously it's bringing something into a future, that's going to turn you on and move you forward, so that there is less connection with the archaic past that belongs in the attic with all your other memories. You know what I mean? So people need to be impulsive and spontaneous and shoot from the hip and be a little bit reckless. And it's like Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, once said, it may be a risk not to take a risk in your life.
Yeah. I love that. And also I love this magnet imagery and feeling, because I feel like the true wizard knows the full power of the magnet. So like when I'm wielding it in one way, I can attract.
Right.
But then if something feels off, I can just flip that magnet around and use that electricity in the opposite way and like just get it away from me. It's like can help create a boundary, like repel also. So like that's like having that turned up to 12 as good on Spinal Tap during by Uranus during this transit feels like it can be really empowering if we're like aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, it deals with, like I said before, the sense of adventure.
Yeah.
A new
Like
purpose,
attract, yeah, let's attract the adventure.
new
Yeah.
definition in life, and it wants you to breathe it in. But you have to take, inhale is what, and people, Uranus, because it deals with change in the future. There's a lot of signs like, the air signs and the fire signs that definitely, what I mean, will embrace this with a snap of a finger. But like I said, before, there are going to be, some signs that their planets are in a certain, degree that these breath of fresh air is hitting, that like This sounds dangerous. This is kind of like different. This is outside the lines. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to be reckless in embracing this. And it's like, to me, it's like, what are you going to miss out on?
Hmm.
This is how I would look at it.
Right. So yeah, yeah. The risk is not taking a risk sometimes, right? I mean, like, yeah, that's like, because that's where you rewrite reality, is in those moments, by taking risks into those.
Oh, I think
You
that's a
know,
good word.
I'm a tennis coach. Like, no risk, no reward is the saying. No pressure, no diamonds, right? So,
Right.
like, you have to be able to put yourself into that pressure sometimes, and so and I think reminding ourselves there's no right or wrong in those situations. It's just like you're allowing yourself to go in brave into this experience, and I'm not going to judge myself on the other side of it. Can help access that bravery in these electrifying moments that Uranus is bringing us
Yeah.
right now.
I mean,
Uh,
it's like some people are just going to enjoy where they're at and what they are doing. And if that's okay with you, that's fine. And
yeah.
I mean, and like I say, it's like, you know what I mean? You can enjoy that Windows 98 and not update it. You know what it is?
Stay on my get that MySpace account going.
and then you're at, I mean, so I'm just looking at, I'm, the only thing I'm worried about in the next, I would say 30 days, is that, I just don't like in dealing with Iran at this particular time. And like I said
Yeah.
before, Pakistan and India went at it, and they just went at it again. And fortunately, Trump said, "Hey, you know what? We're not going to trade with you. Let's just stop it." Which was, I think, a very important point. You know what I mean? That he made that. But even Palestine and Israel had their problems back at that particular time. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's like we have to like. I mean, Uranus is all about not only the future but humanizing things, is how I would look at it, and get into the essence of who and what we are. And then I look at it that, as we discussed earlier, Pluto being in Aquarius till 1944, and sort of like closing a chapter. But, Pluto dealt with hurricanes, tornadoes, and all these kind of things. And certainly, it dealt with airplanes. We've seen many airplane crashes go on, even here in Tennessee. But what is also beneath the earth? Beneath the earth are the riches that is within a person, the gold, the silver, the platinum. And this is what Pluto is trying to bring to the surface, not only within us, but within the world as a whole, and basically change, and like, I mean, we wouldn't even be in this situation if they had allowed Tulsa to, and his inventions and,
Yeah.
and him to live and things of that nature. We would be way ahead of this
True.
little monopoly game that we're in.
Yeah. I guess there's a timeline where that happened. But we're hanging out on this other one right now, trying to course correct Atlantis. But that's what we're here to do, right?
Right.
So I've got a few questions that we tend to close our interviews with, and they're just rapid fire, short things, so you don't have to overthink them. And I know Michelle would want me to ask some of these for you, so I'll fire them at you.
Okay.
What's a book that changed your life?
Um, I'll tell you what, that's really interesting because there are two books that changed my life. One of them was Black Elk Speaks, because my bloodline is from Tennessee, and I found out through Ancestry Check that my daughter got me that we are part Cherokee, is what it is. And for a while, I joined the Eagle Bear Clan in Alabama when they had to move a woman chief, because she and I were good friends, and she knew, the content of who and I was. But when the let's just say when the I don't want to say the white Indian came in, but when the full-blooded Indian came in, the man, my blood is contaminated. You're out of here. And then another book that I read right after that, because I was in college at the time, actually, was Parmesia Yogananda's biography.
Yes.
And that I started doing yoga 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
I took cooking classes because grilled cheese and tomato soup got old pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was single, You know what I mean? So I had that Uranus, that I was willing to change. I mean, my parents, because I was so outside the lines, thought I needed to see a psychologist. They thought something was wrong with me.
Well, God bless you for sticking with your gut instinct there, Tom. What is a mantra you live by?
I try to put other people first. My astrology readings, I've been doing them for over 40 years now. Um, I have other money coming in, is what it is. So I'm very let's just say I'm very cost efficient. I'm very cheap.
We sure are.
Some of my colleagues are charging $300 or $400 an hour. And I just look at it that if people are coming to me, they're not getting answers, maybe from other people, or maybe want an alternative kind of thing and try it out, see what it does. And so I want to make myself so that I can have access to them. And the best way to do it is to lower my prices. I mean, everybody tells me, raise your price, raise your price. I can't raise mine till you raise yours. Yes, you can. You can go do that because I have other money. And I have an office in my home, less overhead, so I'm just trying to really do unto others, and I guess I
Deep.
look at it in a religious way. I'm trying to get I'm trying to get to heaven.
You're getting the karmic.
But it's an unorthodox heaven than I
friend.
read.
What is the part of your soul's purpose you're still learning to embody?
I think that's a good question that I'm still trying to answer. I mean, I've been on this journey, being into yoga and then getting into the Rosicrucians, you know what I mean, Max Heidel, and then getting into anthroposophy with Rudolf Steiner, and then Madame Blavatsky and Corinne Helene, and then Alice Bailey. She studied with the Tibetan monks for years. So let me put it this way: I read every night, and you know what I mean. I have 3 or 4 books on my, on the stand there next to my bed. But I have about 500 books here. None of them are on the bestseller list. I'll put it that way. And then I read, you know what I mean. And then I tune into Justin Sledge, who is a rabbi with a doctor. He's a doctorate, but I listen to him at least twice a week as his interpretation of the Gospels. Not was, and the real meaning. Yeah, I mean, he speaks not only Hebrew but Greek, and you know what I mean, and it just flows just like that. But he's outside the lines, and getting into the Gospels that were banned, like what was that? Thomas and Philip and Mary, to name just a couple of them, and he gets into why some of the priests buried those when the church told them to burn them. Why would you burn a book? Oh, that's right. The Nazis did that.
Yeah. And the whole Library of Alexandria, they burned the building. They actually didn't burn the content.
Well, the thing is that,
hiding somewhere.
from the books I've read, let me put it this way, that not only Christ, but Mary Magdalene studied at the Library of Alexandria.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And because she was a high priestess, is what she was. And of course, she was closest to Christ, and Peter Paul got pretty aggravated that he came to her first. You know what I mean? Why would he come to a woman, so to speak? And that's when they got together and banned women from the church. You can cook and clean, but that's about it, what's going on. And I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble for saying that. But that's why they burned down the Library of Alexandria once they ransacked it.
Right.
And
Ransacked it first, though. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. What are you feeling most empowered by right now?
Most empowered. I think I'm most empowered as I look outside my window. I see that people want to give themselves more and more of a personal definition in life, and get off the leash that's leading to nowhere, and that's how I look at it. I mean, I'm constantly reading. and new ways of input, new ways that I can give information to clients and things of that nature, and that just empowers me even more. I'm thinking about going back and teaching again, but that, you see, teaching is like a 2-year commitment. Is on my part is what it is. But the thing is that the reason part of that also is I have a lot more information to give to people that want to serve humanity in that aspect of spirituality, so to speak. And because when you take courses from certain um, institutions, they are extremely expensive. And to me, to deliver what I consider an authentic truth, because planet, sun, moon, we know what, that sun and moon do, you know what I mean? And then I have to look at it myself. Well, who's the author? Well, the author is the prime creator. So why aren't the other planets doing something? But maybe, we haven't reached that level of a dog hearing a different frequency that we can't hear yet. And
Yes.
we need to elevate ourselves a little bit more. Listen to our intuition, in which we call the Elohim, the brothers and sisters of light, are coming to our dreams and delivering, people to you that are the messengers that are going to help you evolve, to be true to yourself and, to your uh, path in life.
That's deep. I love that analogy of not having quite the ears to hear yet, that frequency. Um, any other like empowering guidance or wisdom or message you could give listeners in particular about navigating this Uranus electrifying transit into Gemini? Like,
Well, I mean, Gemini deals with our thought process. It does deal with communications, transaction negotiations, and things that are coming out of our mind and then being kind of like translated. And the only thing I could say with Uranus being there, it's like, look, the unknown, obviously, it can be very scary, but it also can be a new adventure, that's going to stimulate you, to sort of like, get out of that dungeon. And because it's a plan of autonomy, get more of what you want, you need, you desire in life. And then, as we talked about earlier, being a magnet so that we attract people and those elements in life that are going to help us, get into a rapid evolvement, so that our aspirations are no longer a question mark. They become a third dimensional reality in our life. So we need to embrace, these changes and look beneath the surface and the shadows of like, why is all this going on? And do I need to be inhibited and run from it? Or do I need to, join the posse here and see what this is going to lead to?
Well, thank you, Tom. I mean, this has been quite a masterpiece experience for me.
Well, it's been for me too.
Is there any way that if there's do you want to give if people want to follow you or know about you, or where would they look? I mean,
Well, if they're, especially those in Nashville, I mean, they can go online and type in Thomas Parsons astrologer. That'll come up my website. But, even I'm on astrologers in Nashville. If you look in Nashville, the astrologers that are here, you know what I mean? And some of them are my students that have now been colleagues, by the way, which is just great. You know what I mean? So the message is, being carried further. Is our part,
that's what we're here to do, and I hope to be a part of that in some form too. And Tom, nothing but a pleasure, an honor, and
thank you.
and I really hope we can continue to have you as a recurring guest, and especially anytime we have these big, impactful transits going down, that we can sink our teeth into and help others with.
Well, that's why I like you being the monitor. You know what I mean? Because I get some people that want me to be on a podcast, and I look at, what they've done and some of the things they produced. And, like I say, you're a very spiritually aware, individual, and there's nothing dogmatic in any way, shape, or form about you. You're up, you're there using, the podcast and other elements of your life to bring awareness, to those, the people that are, have some questions that, they can't get sometimes from, the traditional therapy. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
For people that are in it, so this way you and I can have a conversation. We're both on the same channel, so to speak, and hopefully we got some people that are going to get interested and tune in next time, and or go out and get a book or things of that particular nature. I mean, I look at you and I that we're messengers, is what we are, and to those that have the ears, to listen, as they say,
Yeah.
thank you for listening.
Yeah. And on that note, thank you,
Okay.
everyone out there, for listening. And I'm honored and humbled by your words. And this was Empowerment Unleashed Now, guys. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, you guys.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Empowerment Unleashed Now. Please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and let us know how this helped you.
Join us right here every week for another episode.